Empedocles, a name that might not be as familiar as Socrates or Plato, was a visionary thinker whose ideas still resonate today. He lived in the 5th century BCE on the Greek island of Sicily, where he made his mark not only as a philosopher, but also as a poet, mystic, and healer. Empedocles was one of those rare individuals whose thoughts bridged the gap between science and spirituality, offering a vision of the world that was both profound and poetic. At the heart of Empedocles' philosophy was his theory of the 4 classical elements: earth, air, fire, and water. This theory would go on to shape Western thought for centuries, influencing fields as diverse as medicine, alchemy, and even modern science. But Empedocles was more than just a theorist. He was a man who saw the world as a dynamic, interconnected whole, where everything was in constant motion, driven by the forces of love and strife. Empedocles was born around 490 BCE in the prosperous Greek city of Acragas on the island of Sicily. Empedocles was a product of a vibrant and intellectually fertile environment. Acragas, known for its magnificent temples and thriving culture, was one of the leading cities of the ancient Greek world, and its citizens were renowned for their wealth and love of art and philosophy. Empedocles' family was of noble lineage, and he was likely exposed to a wide range of ideas and influences from a young age. His father, Matan, was a prominent citizen, and his family's wealth and status would have provided Empedocles with access to the best education available. This education would have included the study of poetry, rhetoric, music, and most importantly, philosophy, a discipline that was still in its infancy but was already beginning to shape the intellectual landscape of the Greek world. The intellectual climate of Empedocles' time was one of intense exploration and debate. The Pre-Socratic philosophers who lived and thought before the time of Socrates were grappling with some of the most fundamental questions of existence. What is the nature of reality? What are the basic components of the universe? How do change and permanence coexist? These questions were not just abstract musings. They were deeply connected to the way people understood their place in the cosmos and their relationship with the divine. Empedocles was deeply influenced by the philosophical traditions that preceded him, particularly the teachings of Pythagoras and Parmenides. Pythagoras, a philosopher and mathematician, taught that the universe was governed by mathematical principles and that harmony and proportion were the keys to understanding the cosmos. This idea of a well-ordered, harmonious universe would become a central theme in Empedocles' own philosophy. Parmenides, on the other hand, introduced a radically different view of reality. He argued that change was an illusion and that the true nature of reality was unchanging, eternal, and indivisible. Parmenides' philosophy challenged the very notion of plurality and change, suggesting that what we perceive as a world of diversity and transformation is, in fact, a single unchanging reality. Empedocles sought to reconcile these seemingly contradictory views, and in doing so, he developed his own unique vision of the universe. He proposed that the world was composed of 4 fundamental elements: earth, air, fire, and water, that were in constant motion, combining and separating under the influence of 2 opposing forces, love and strife. This dynamic interplay between the elements and forces would form the core of Empedocles' philosophy and provide a framework for understanding the natural world. Empedocles was not just a philosopher, he was also a charismatic and influential figure in his community. He is said to have been a healer, capable of performing miracles, and was revered by his followers as a prophet and a sage. His reputation as a healer and a teacher extended far beyond the borders of Acragas, and his ideas attracted disciples from across the Greek world. Empedocles' life, however, was not without controversy. His bold claims to divine knowledge and his assertion that he possessed the power to control natural forces earned him both admiration and suspicion. Some viewed him as a charlatan, while others saw him as a true visionary. According to legend, Empedocles met a dramatic end, throwing himself into the crater of Mount Etna, the active volcano in Sicily, in an attempt to prove his immortality. While the truth of this story is uncertain, it serves as a testament to the enigmatic and larger-than-life persona that Empedocles cultivated during his lifetime. The early Greek philosophers were engaged in a quest to understand the fundamental nature of the cosmos. They sought to identify the primary substances or principles that underlie all existence. Some, like Thales, proposed that water was the primary substance, while others like Anaximenes argued for air. Heraclitus suggested that fire was the fundamental element, representing change and transformation. Empedocles, however, offered a more comprehensive and nuanced view. He proposed that the universe was composed of not just one, but 4 fundamental elements: earth, air, fire, and water. These elements, he argued, were the basic building blocks of all matter, and everything in the natural world was composed of different combinations of these elements. For Empedocles, the diversity of the world, its mountains, rivers, plants, animals, and even human beings, could be explained by the various ways in which these elements combined and interacted. But Empedocles' theory went beyond a simple categorization of the natural world. He introduced the idea that the elements were in constant motion, driven by 2 opposing forces, love and strife. Love, according to Empedocles, was the force that brought the elements together, creating unity and harmony. It was love that caused the elements to combine and form complex structures, giving rise to the diversity of life in the natural world. Strife, on the other hand, was the force that separated the elements, leading to division and conflict. When strife dominated, the elements would pull apart, breaking down the structures that love had created. This constant tension between love and strife, between unity and separation, was what drove the cycle of creation and destruction in the universe. Empedocles' theory of the 4 classical elements was revolutionary for several reasons. First, it provided a naturalistic explanation for the diversity and change observed in the world. Instead of attributing these phenomena to the whims of gods, Empedocles explained them in terms of the interactions between basic elements and forces. This was a significant departure from the mythological explanations that had dominated Greek thought up to that point. Second, his theory introduced the idea that the world was not static, but dynamic and ever-changing. The elements were not fixed but in constant motion, combining and separating under the influence of love and strife. This idea of a dynamic, ever-changing universe would have a profound impact on subsequent generations of philosophers and scientists who would continue to explore the nature of change and transformation. Empedocles' theory provided a framework for understanding the interconnectedness of all things. The elements were not isolated entities, but parts of a larger whole, constantly interacting with one another. This vision of the universe as a unified, interconnected system would become a central theme in later philosophical and scientific thought. Empedocles' theory of the 4 classical elements had a profound, lasting influence on the history of Western thought. His ideas were taken up and developed by some of the greatest philosophers of antiquity, including Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. Plato, for example, incorporated Empedocles' 4 elements into his vision of the universe, associating each element with a specific geometrical shape known as a Platonic solid. For Plato, these shapes were the building blocks of the cosmos, and the elements themselves were manifestations of a deeper underlying reality. Aristotle, while critical of some aspects of Empedocles' thought, also expanded on his ideas. He associated each element with a pair of qualities. Earth is cold and dry, water is cold and wet, air is hot and wet, and fire is hot and dry. Aristotle's ideas on the elements would go on to form the basis of medieval and early modern science, influencing everything from chemistry to medicine. The Stoics, another influential school of philosophy, were also deeply influenced by Empedocles' ideas, particularly in their understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. For the Stoics, the universe was a living, rational organism where everything was interconnected and interdependent. This idea of cosmic unity rooted in Empedocles' vision of the elements would have a lasting impact on Western thought. But Empedocles' influence wasn't limited to philosophy. It also extended into the realm of science and medicine. The Greek physician Hippocrates, often considered the father of medicine, adopted the concept of the four elements and associated them with the four humors: blood or air, phlegm or water, yellow bile or fire, and black bile or earth. According to the theory of the humors, the balance of these substances in the body can determine a person's health and temperament, a theory that would dominate medical thought for centuries. Empedocles' ideas also played a crucial role in the development of alchemy, the precursor to modern chemistry. Alchemists were drawn to this theory of the elements because it provided a framework for understanding the transformation of substances. Their quest to discover the philosopher's stone, a substance that would transmute base metals into gold and grant eternal life, was rooted in the belief that understanding the elements would unlock the secrets of the universe. While Empedocles is often remembered as a philosopher and scientist, it's important to recognize the mystical and poetic dimensions of his thought. Empedocles was not just interested in the physical world, he was also deeply concerned with the spiritual and ethical aspects of existence. One of the most fascinating aspects of Empedocles' thought is his belief in the transmigration of souls. This idea, likely influenced by Pythagorean tradition, holds that souls are immortal and undergo a cycle of reincarnation. For Empedocles, the soul was a divine entity, but due to some ancient cosmic sin, souls were trapped in the material world, experiencing suffering and longing for their original divine state. He taught that the goal of life was to purify the soul and escape the cycle of reincarnation, returning to a state of unity with the cosmos. This process of purification involved living a life of virtue, self-discipline, and reverence for the divine. His emphasis on the ethical and spiritual dimensions of existence reflects the influence of Pythagoras, who also taught that the soul could be purified through a life of virtue and philosophical contemplation. This aspect of Empedocles' thought is reflected in his poetry, which was composed in epic verse and filled with vivid imagery and symbolic language. He often described himself as a divine being capable of performing miracles and possessing secret knowledge. In one of his most famous fragments, Empedocles declares, "I am an immortal god, no longer mortal, as I wander honored by all, both young and old, in every place where I go." This poetic language wasn't just a means of communication, it was a way of expressing the deep connection he felt with the cosmos and the divine forces that governed it. His poetry was intended to inspire and guide his followers on the path to spiritual enlightenment, helping them to understand the true nature of reality and their place within it. For Empedocles, philosophy was not just an intellectual pursuit, it was a spiritual journey. He saw himself as a prophet and a healer, bringing the wisdom of the gods to humanity. His teachings were intended to guide people on the path to spiritual enlightenment, helping them to transcend the material world and achieve unity with the divine. Empedocles' ideas have had a lasting impact on Western thought, shaping the development of philosophy, science, and religion for centuries. His theory of the four classical elements remained a dominant paradigm in science and philosophy for nearly 2,000 years, influencing thinkers from the ancient world to the Renaissance. During the Renaissance, there was a renewed interest in ancient Greek thought, and Empedocles' ideas experienced a revival. Alchemists who sought to transform base metals into gold and discover the elixir of life were particularly drawn to Empedocles' theory of the elements. They saw in his ideas a reflection of their own quest for spiritual transformation and the unity of all things. In the modern era, his influence can be seen in the works of poets, philosophers, and scientists. His vision of a dynamic, interconnected universe has resonated with those who seek to understand the deeper connections that bind us to the cosmos and to one another. Empedocles' ideas have also found echoes in the environmental movement, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things and the need for a holistic approach to understanding the natural world. His emphasis on the ethical and spiritual dimensions of existence has also had a lasting impact on religious and philosophical thought. His belief in the transmigration of souls and the need for spiritual purification has influenced a wide range of religious traditions, from ancient Greek mystery religions to modern spiritual movements. Today, Empedocles' ideas continue to inspire those who seek to understand the deeper mysteries of existence. His vision of a universe governed by love and strife, where everything is interconnected and in constant motion, offers a powerful reminder of the complexity and beauty of the world we live in.